Oh my God, hey, this is like, yay! Yeah, you already
Alright, let's go with 2 minutes. Okay, who else?
Watching the clouds out the window. Open my eyes and I feel no pain. Watching the clouds and I let go. Sometimes you can't just fly away.
Okay, can we please welcome our first panel to the stage? The future of on-chain interactions with Jonathan Stevens, Jean Alt, and ETHDenver. If everyone just wants to take a seat so we can all tune in. And if you are gonna like speak and network, that's fine. Just do it over in the corner or maybe outside. But yeah, welcome to Social Everything. Guys, we need some energy in here. Okay, nice. Thank you, Diana. Stephen?
Yeah, we're gonna need one more seat. All right. The A team's here. Amazing. Well, thank you for everyone for coming out. We hope this is going to be super helpful for you. We hope it's going to be super, educational. So we'll kick things off. Today's panel's really going to be about what is the future of on-chain transactions? What is the state of on-chain transactions today? What does it even mean? And, how is it going to look like in the future? So I think first off, let's have everyone on the panel just give a quick introduction of who you are, what your background is, and what excites you most in what you're doing.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I'm Stephen Horvath. I'm the team lead for the apps at Universal Everything, also LUKSO. And yeah, I'm a software developer, and I've been a developer for 25 years.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Jean. I've been working on LUKSO, Universal Everything for now a bit more than 3 years. Yeah, and I lead the smart contract engineering at the company. I've been on smart contract for like around 6 years now. Yeah, coming from Web 2. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this smart contract technology. And yeah, very happy to be here in this panel, yeah, discussing all of this topic.
Hey everybody, I'm also anonymous and I have a background in filmmaking. I've been in Web3 for a long time now. LUKSO luminary, happy to be a voice for kind of the future of self-sovereign identity and social and kind of where I think everything's going. So as a content creator and a storyteller, like this is the perfect place to be for the new creative economy.
Hi everyone, I'm ETHDenver, as I am on Twitter. You can find me there. I came to LUKSO as a community member looking for a metaverse investment, became a super fan. It drove me to actually switch careers, become a full stack developer, dip my toes into smart contracts, and now actively trying to bring on-chain interactions to the ecosystem. And I think the most exciting part of being part of this right now is this is an organic ecosystem, truly. So that's what I got to say.
Amazing. So just by a show of hands, who is a builder currently? Or a founder or developer? Wow, nice, amazing. Okay, and then who's on the BD and let's say marketing side of things? Amazing, okay, cool. Really helps to kind of frame the discussion. So, before we jump into the topic of on-chain interactions, maybe we need to take a step back, right? Like what is for the panelists, from your perspective, what is the state of on-chain transactions right now? How do you define it? And where are we at now before we start talking about where we're gonna go in the future?
Yeah, so, I mean, as we all know, we're all convinced that blockchain technology is extremely powerful, lots of applications out there for it. But I think we can all agree that the onboarding has a lot of room to grow. I mean, just the experience of, setting up a wallet. I think when I counted all of the steps involved to set up a wallet, there's 20 steps involved, and some of those are kind of dangerous to probably normal people. So, it's something like, as a very technical person, it took me a long time to figure out how to actually do all of it. For a non-technical person, they're dead out of the water. They don't have a chance to really get involved. So I think that's probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah, so I think it's always interesting because when I talk about this topic, even if I'm always from the very low level engineering, I think we expect way too much from the user to understand the technicalities in order to use any application. And we use way too many technical terms, like standards or like, I mean, the one that I'm really strongly opinionated about is like, it's private keys. Like private keys, asymmetric cryptography, it's a very, very low level technology. And we expect like people who are very non-technical, people who don't even know how a computer works under the hood to understand something that is very, very complex. I think the big problem with onboarding is that we are using the technology and the technical terms on the user-facing side, while all of this complexity, for me, should be really abstracted away and completely hidden. Like the user just interact with an application and just trust the technology and everything, and don't have to know what's happening behind the scenes. So I think this is probably the biggest challenge, is that we are still on the user-facing side too attached to the low-level technicalities. And we need to really abstract all of that away.
Yeah, I agree with both those guys on the technical side. I mean, 20 steps, your average person is going to make it through maybe a couple of those before they just give up. And the ones that do make it through, I mean, the average person, there's many different ways that they can actually then lose access to those private keys or whatever. So yeah, I mean, if you look at other things like the internet and email and messaging and all these things, as they evolved, once they got completely abstracted away, that's when you saw an influx of users. So I think we're just kind of at this inflection point where the technology is just too complicated. I think that's one side of it, but then also like on the user base side, I think we've yet to tap into anything beyond just these monetary tools, right? That only people that really go after value will go through the trouble and the painstaking experience that Web3 currently is to actually try to make money. But the average person, that's 90% of their stuff is social or more, right? And that's what they want. We've yet to meet them where they're at. I think that's kind of the key barrier that we're up against.
It's interesting you said tool. And John, you said, what do we think about the really state of on-chain interactions right now? And immediately the thought comes to mind, to the man with the hammer, everything looks like a nail. There's one use case that's found product market fit really widely across blockchain, and that's DeFi. But DeFi is really, right, again, decentralized finance, and finance is a series of, or a system of tools, right, to be leveraged in the industry that, obviously money is important in. I say that because blockchain has tooling that's available to be used for many other use cases, and we're missing those on-chain transactions right now. Those on-chain transactions basically don't exist because right now we're trying to bang every single screw or wall or anything with a hammer. And like, that is something that we need to kind of move away from. And I think that's where we're at with on-chain transactions right now, is what we're seeing is everything's being treated as a nail, and that doesn't have to be the case. Blockchain is a very powerful and can be very expressive technology. It just depends on what are we trying to use it for.
No, that's interesting. And, looking at where it is today, how did we get here? What has led to this kind of bottlenecking and, being able to onboard users, to have that smooth UX, UI? What has led us to this place effectively?
Why are we in this? Yeah, kind of spaces. Well, let's be honest, we're kind of all geeks, right? So we like this stuff. We like to kind of try to figure stuff out, right? So, I mean, that's one of the things that attracted me to it. Like, I know I can figure this stuff out, and I like the challenge. Yeah, I would say that's probably why we're here. But yeah, if we want something different, we have to kind of, if we want the world to see what we see, we need to change the presentation.
I mean, it's actually hard to answer this question, why we are here. Maybe because we are, maybe because like we are as the first audience who use the technology. We are very technical and tech savvy. Like it's, like people who I think people who interact with like the apps and use their wallets, they are very technical and aware. When they open their wallet, then they're going to interact with the app, and they are like technical enough to be, so for some of them to be like, okay, let me check what's this transaction, what's the data that's going through, what's the contract I'm interacting with. But the goal really is that we have users that don't need to understand that. And I mean, how do we get there? I just think we need to carry on building cool things, like with cool people, and like making people play around and see how seeing how people react and getting user feedback, and really exploring areas and use cases where like the smart contract and the blockchain together really have a very good fit. Like DeFi is obviously the first one that came in, because like with Bitcoin, it was the first reason why the blockchain, the technology itself, was created to solve this particular use case, this particular industry use case. But I think we need to explore more of an industry, like things like I don't know, insurance, property rights, escrow payments, or like how people can, like how creators can have ownership of their data and like have control over how they create their own incentive mechanism. Like how really expanding the technology to more like over use case, where maybe like the audience, then it's less technical. People in DeFi are very technical. And then if you are exploring on a new market and you see how your audience is like, you're like, okay, these people are like less technical in terms of terminology, then you can think of, okay, then I'm going to build my application that is less technical words oriented. So yeah, I think just really building cool things and seeing how people, the audience react.
I think, I mean, when you ask that question, I'm picturing more like the macro level, like how did Web3, how did we get to this debacle that we currently find ourselves in, where, I mean, I feel like it did start with a monetary thing, because obviously Bitcoin was the first, and people saw the narrative of like, oh man, they got so rich from holding, and then that's what kind of led to DeFi and these other little mini hype cycles, whether it was NFTs or now meme coins, but now they play out within like an hour, right? So I feel like we've kind of maxed out what we can do with those extraction cycles. So maybe we even should look to Web 2 in a lot of ways to like, how did even just talking the monetary instruments, how did they evolve in Web 2? Like Venmo, it's like they evolved to like have profiles and messages and things like that. Yeah, it's centralized and it's not great. Even mine, like they literally deleted my account because they thought, oh, you're doing it for business or whatever. Like, so there's a lot of ways to improve that. But I think even just looking at what the natural progression is and integrating social into some of these things that, that we do with DeFi and other things, I think that's a way to kind of move the needle, but then finding new ways just to expand, beyond these same played out things, I think is a way that we can kind of move the goalpost.
John, you said bottleneck, like how do we bottleneck? And bottleneck, again, you can picture what a bottleneck looks like. We have a lot of energy and then we get squeezed. And I mean, not to be like too visual, but if you think about it, I think we're at this point where we're struggling to get through that opening. And I'm going to mince metaphors, but where we're at right now, we're experiencing that slowdown because we've like run up a mountain and we expended all this energy. And to slow down, and now we've hit some point where we're tired and we don't have everything we need. But to admit that we might have to actually come back down the mountain a little bit before we ascend again is painful. And that's why we're not getting the rapid growth in a lot of sectors, because we spend a lot of energy to get to this point, and we think that maybe we can innovate with whatever we have, right? Like we're going to look across our backpacks. Maybe you've got the string, right? And I've got a knife, and maybe we can make something happen. But ultimately, time will tell whether or not that's possible. You look at iterative cycles across other technologies. Sometimes you have to admit we got to go back to the drawing board a little bit, and we have to spend some energy to come up with some better ideas, or maybe more flexible ideas that'll actually, again, mincing metaphors, go back to that bottleneck, get us through the opening, right?
Got it. Okay, so if we know where we are, and following the thread of your analogy of, the string, the splint, right? To get us out of this whole, like, what would you say, from the perspective of someone who's constantly thinking about UX, UI, onboarding, building out wallets and stuff like that, from the perspective of someone who's thinking about smart contracts, right? And the interplay of, what's needed, and from a creator standpoint, from a builder standpoint, ETHDenver, what are those pieces that need to come together, to really bring forth that future that Web3 has promised, and we need to move towards too. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to start with our users, right? We need to look at what they understand and what they don't understand. We need to look at, and we need to be honest about it. We have to pay attention, so we have to actually look at, what's a user experience that the masses are able to understand and are able to do, and how can we shift what we do to be able to have that? How can we remove all of, like, there's so many points of friction that exist right now. How can we look at those points of friction and work on removing them? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like Stephen is more like on the user, the UX side, which is really the high level. And on my end, like on a daily basis, is more like how do you design a protocol that is that solves like really like a business problem, like a particular problem. And I think for I would say on the smart contract side, it's really thinking of, imagine like a use case, like an interaction, like you have a buyer and seller. How do you break down an interaction between people? Like, what's the steps really involved? And then look at smart contract and thinking of, okay, in which part of the interaction can we make the process where you need to rely less on trusting the other party, because like the interaction is more like self-enforceable if someone acts maliciously, or if someone acts in its own in its own intent. And I think it's really like at this level, like how do you what can you really solve like with a technology which is a very particular, which particular problem can you use the technology to fix, or how you can use the blockchain or smart contract to just add an extra value on top of what existing solution in Web 2 bring. So I think it's really, it's really that, like, I don't know, does it make sense? Like, like really at the, like, how do we interact with each other, and how can we interact differently with this technology in between, so that we bring a new way of interacting, like with something in the middle, like a programmable computer in the middle.
I think it's really twofold. Like, you need, like what you guys are mentioning on the tech side, to abstract everything away so it's so easy anyone can use it, or they don't even know they're using blockchain. Like, that's the dream, right? But I think it's also about how do we then, once that's accomplished, how do we incentivize the average person to actually use Web3 instead of Web 2? And one thing, Jean, you mentioned was trust. I think that's what's really missing. I mean, clearly, I think in Web 2 is way too centralized, and the average person doesn't quite grasp that yet. But I think transparency is like the new form of objectivity. Like, instead of relying on a centralized entity, whether it's an institution, a government, a platform, to moderate and kind of tell you what's what, right? I think like that trust, I think the younger generation have really grasped that. Like, they don't trust anything. Like, we don't trust the media or the government. Like, you can't even really even trust if there's gold where they say there is anymore, right? So like, I think that narrative shift will be really impactful when people realize that it's a very trustworthy thing in Web3, when you can actually authenticate things. And say, for instance, like if you're a creator, a content creator, I mean, you want your profile that's decentralized, that you can't be censored, you can't you can't lose access to it. That's a big thing. I think as governments take more control over these things, that will become more of a discussion, I think. And then blockchain will be ready to onboard those people. But I think even like from like the mainstream media is falling apart in real time, right? More and more people are following individuals on social media that they have vetted themselves and that they believe and trust in, right? Now you say you move that on chain and therefore you know you're dealing with that person. They can authenticate the transaction when they do a post and you know it came from them. You know it's not a bot, you know it's not AI. Like those things will be super impactful, I think. And it's going to open up a whole new economy of trust, I think. I think that's a big part.
Call it my ADD, but like I lost the thread of the conversation. I'm just enjoying all of everything you guys have to say. What I want to say is, and maybe this adds to what you guys said, or maybe it's a completely separate thread, but we are not building for circular economies on blockchain right now. I can launch a shitcoin and give you an insider track right now. Everybody here makes money, but is that really adding to the real economy? The answer is no. We're literally not building for real circular economies on the blockchain, and that's a problem. And that's a problem that has to be solved. And like, that's what we're missing. And that's what we have to start preferencing for. We have to start preferencing for it with the applications that we build as an application builder. That's all I think about. How do we build circular economies using blockchain technology? As a profile, as the extension lead, right? You're thinking, how do people gain access to the real economy? As a smart contract developer, you're thinking about how do we build trustless interactions that enable circular economies? Alts, you're saying, really from the perspective of everybody socially, why do people want to engage in these trustless economic systems, right? So like all of these pieces have to work together in concert. And we're really, it's being drowned out. This signal is being drowned out with a lot of noise and a lot of, I'll call it extraction, but again, another buzzword. Just a lot of development that is not actually replicating real productive transactional throughput in the real economy. We just got this weird caricature of an ecosystem, of an economy that is purely financially driven. Again, everything looks like a nail to the man with a hammer, period. Like that's what it is.
Agreed. Also, you know, your insight, you know, about being able to prove yourself on chain, especially with AI and how quickly deep fakes are moving. It's like, man, I can't trust anything anymore. You know, it's like you can fake all the videos, all the pictures on your profile. Then what's the next step? Like hop on a call? Can't even trust that. I was speaking to a university not too long ago, and they're going through interviews, and they're actually seeing cases where people are coming with an AI, you know, and just feeding in answers from ChatGPT, and you can't even tell. Right, so it's becoming a problem, and I think that's where I'm pretty hopeful, where kind of AI and blockchain will come together and kind of converge, right? Because there will come a point where you're going to need that blockchain identity and reputation that you've built over time to prove who you are, right? Because you in the digital world now, it's impossible. Just wanted to double click. You were talking about circular economies, because you know, you brought up a good point. Right now, it's not circular, it's linear, it's straight extraction, right? Would you be able to give an example, you know, of that circular economy? You know, what is the aggregation of, you know, some of those kind of on-chain interactions that allow for something like that, or some that you're excited to
I think
see?
Yeah, I think in like a really generalized, like off the top of the cuff, just trying to give something people relate to. I mean, if you're a clothing brand and you're sitting here, and I know we have at least one in the audience, right? You want to offer your clothing to a consumer base. You want them to purchase that clothing, but then you want to take the money that you've earned and reemploy it onto, well, inside this economy in some productive way. And yes, you can use financial tooling. Like, yeah, maybe I could put it in a lending market and create liquidity and start that kind of, I guess, cycle of liquidity that again adds more capacity for the economy. But really what you want to see is you want the person who is selling the clothing and now has earned money to have some other need that they have to fulfill, right? And they need to find another creator that fulfills that need. In the same way, like later on, we're going to get pizza. Everybody here showed up. How do we get the pizza? Well, we need the pizza. Well, why are they providing the pizza? Well, they had to, right? They are supplying it. Well, they needed the ingredients. I mean, there's that circularity to it, and that's what we need here. Again, with Zero XSOL, I'll talk about it later, but just generally, I mean, in an agentic system, you could have a circular economy based on tokens, as long as the agents had some need for those tokens, and you could create arbitrary needs for those tokens if you just bias them for that, right? I mean, think about it. Just take Minecraft, but make the skills scarce, right? Your character can only mine stone, and the next character can only cut wood. But in order to buy a house, build a house, I need to get some stone and some wood. If I'm an agent and I bias the system in that way, now I can create a circular economy where this agent needs those 2 tokens in order to fulfill some need, and then that agent can participate. Again, too many cups of coffee, talking way too fast, but that's where my brain's at. Yeah.
So let's get another coffee. No, but like for instance, like I really like the example of fashion. This is a great example, like because it's a use case where people think, oh, okay, how can we, like, where you can put a smart contract, where you can design a protocol around like a supply chain of fashion. And if you think about it, there is like points, like for instance in fashion, where people are like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy from this brand, but I have ethical values. I don't want to buy clothing that have been produced in countries that use child labor. Or I want to make sure that the material of the clothing, if I buy like a very expensive leather jacket, is from like a reliable source. And if you really go very far in the stretching of, let's imagine we have everything on chain, everything like traceable, because blockchain is, at the end of the day, is a public audit trail of what happened historically. You could think of, oh, okay, this company is producing a jacket. Where did they get their leather from? From this source, and you can have like a smart contract if it's a digital jacket that keep track of all the sources where all the component of the jacket came from, or like the example of incentive, like this company, and for every, let's say, for every $50 jacket sold, they're gonna reinvest $2 in a certain source. Well, there is another trust factor. Like, what you as a user, you think it's good, but you're thinking, what does that guarantee? Is that really the case? Does the company is really going to take $2 and give it? Maybe they can keep it in their pocket. And this is where smart contract, for instance, have a good role, because it's programmable logic that is immutable. So like you can have, like, when you buy the jacket, then automatically the $2 I send to this address. And this is where you create, like new business model where you have points in the system that are trustless. Like what I think is important to realize is that smart contract and blockchain is not about removing completely trust. It's pointing out where in interaction we have frictions because there is trust, and how we can use smart contract and design a system where we have to be less worried about trusting each other, trusting that you're going to act maliciously. So I think I'm just bouncing on the example.
I just want to say, because my brain caught up to my mouth, it's not just TVL is a metric that is widely accepted across the entire industry, and it's not about TVL for the sake of TVL. We want that value to stay on chain in a circular way, so you have a high velocity of movement of this value between actors that are using it in a productive way that is meaningfully making their life better, right? Not just for pure aggregation of wealth, right? It has to be adding to people's lives, adding value to people's lives. And if that's happening, you have a circular economy that's productive. So it's not just about increasing transactions on any network. It's about increasing productive transactions on any network. And that's a focus area.
So then I think the question is, like, we actually have to have users, and we have to have users who are doing useful, valuable things. Then the question is, how do we get there?
LUKSO standard proposals. No. I think it's making it as easy as possible, right? Solving those UX UI issues, enabling developers, and it's exactly what we're trying to do and what the whole space is doing, what we're trying to figure out at the end of the day, right? Making the right kind of foundational building blocks for developers to be able to supercharge their applications to build the use cases that we want today, effectively, right? Because once you have easy access and you solve the identity piece, well, now you've got social interactions, right? Identity is only one aspect because it's what you claim about yourself, right? The other half of the equation is really, well, okay, if now I can claim things about myself and then be able to express who I am on chain, and I'm not only defined by, my public key, whether I called the top, bought the bottom or sold the bottom, I don't know, right? And the nature of how I trade in my transactions and it's things that are more social in nature, now that builds reputation, right? That's how others define who you say you are, right? And then at that point, once you have identity and reputation, then you've got all the benefits of Web3. Gets you the access. It gets to that circular economy, interesting interactions, right? And so definitely, obviously on the growth side, tons we can do there, but I think it all starts, and that's why, LUKSO's just been so relentlessly kind of product focused, thinking things from first principles, wiping the slate clean and rethinking how things should be built, right? So, and then everything else is cherry on top at the end of the day. Did have two more things. 2 more minutes? Okay, cool. Okay, one more thing then. And this is not related to the space, etc. I'm always, you guys are all very smart, engaged individuals. I'm always curious to learn, how you became who you are today. And if you were to think back and some of the books that you've read or some of the things that influenced you into how you live your life, why you do what you do, what are some of those things or some of those influences? Yeah, just on a personal level.
So I'll answer that from the perspective of a software engineer. So one of the things that really kind of blew my mind open for how I approach software, I consider software writing a form of art. And there's a million ways to write, to write a functionality to do something. But I really loved writing elegant code that's readable and maintainable and that people can inherit the code from me and know exactly what they're looking at. So one of the things that really blew my mind open is this process called domain-driven design. And this is something that I bring into all of my work and teach my team how to use, and especially in very complex software projects. This has been something that's been a huge game changer for me.
Yeah, I can very relate to that. I think when you're an engineer, there is nothing more satisfying than looking at code that you can see that the person who wrote the code put a lot of care into it. But I think, really what really, I would say, inspired me is really going in depth into the topics that I'm interested in. For instance, the Bitcoin white paper, I really got so fascinated by the writing and the idea of challenging completely a system that is that has been existing for so long, like the financial system, how you can redesign that. And I think really what inspired me is how you can really look into like in depth into like any topic that then and yeah, like I mean, yeah, there's few books like Clean Code or like the Bitcoin White Paper. There's the Macroscope as well, like looking at how systems are how you can look at things as systems and how things are dynamic. But yeah, I would say really for me, it's really picking a topic and really be very passionate about it. Like really, I mean, for me, it's like a smart contract technology. I love really thinking of how you can rethink of a system in a completely different way. So I wouldn't say there's a book, but like, yeah, pick your topic and just go full on into it and be passionate about it when you talk about it and when you read about it, and yeah, when you learn about it, yeah.
As a storyteller, I think like I'm just enamored by the human condition, and that's one thing I just love about humans is we all have our own stories and our own perspectives on the world that are shaped by our interactions in life. I'm into improv, and I love the concept of yes and. So you basically take whatever somebody gives you, and you just say yes, and you add to it, right? And together you tell a story. And that's like, to me, Web3 is like the perfect sandbox for this co-collaboration, because when you cut out the middleman of centralization, you have this new form of co-collaboration, and we're kind of telling our story together in real time. We get to curate our experiences in new ways. So I think even our conversation today, it gets me thinking a lot about just like the dead internet theory and how bad interactions have become in Web 2, just dealing with AI and bots. Like I think it's already like 90+% of content on the internet is AI made, right? And in a couple of years, it's going to be like 99.9, right? So how do you filter through all that noise to really have meaningful interactions? And I think even today, like this type of interaction, whenever you mix in at these conferences, it's just great, because I mean, it's helped shape your story. Now I'm thinking about pizza, a lot, but it's great. It's just great to have this co-collaborative energy. And I think that's like what's really positive about the Web3 space in general, is just that attitude.
It's a broad question, John. I'm going to take it from the angle of intimately, I am aware that I am just passing through. This is going to end for me at some point, as it is for everybody here, unless there's huge advances in the ability to keep us alive. And even last night, I was laying in bed thinking about the incredible sacrifices in my own personal life just to be laying in that bed. Sacrifices that I'm actively making that my family has to live with, right? And when you asked that question, I immediately flashed to a book I read. Oh man, this goes back to when I was in college. I was young, just coming of age, let's say, and it's Ishmael. And in Ishmael, there's the concept of givers and takers. And I believe wholeheartedly that this world would be a better place if we had more givers in it. So that's what I'm here to do, is give as much as I can on this way through and try to make the world better, period. Sorry.
That's a wrap. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all your insights. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
White diamonds, boy, and she rollin'. She sick, got they stomach in her comics. What school you went to? God in the Compton. Westchester, King True, yeah, we function. But that dog give me that's on cup. All my kids are sucking up.
Okay, next panel starts in about 10 minutes. We also have about 600 people on the live stream, so make sure to wave at the camera and say hello. Okay, next panel is Bringing Passion On-Chain, Mythbusters. This is very much about the creative economies and how we can find real-world solutions for creators.
My neck on Tarantino, Alejandro slightly. Just know you took the scene and brought a few stand by me, stupid.
So fly in this
50 on me, don't die trying it. I'm up and down when I'm sliding it. Beamers and the jets outside of it. West side, get the money, yeah, that's for sure. Streets don't love you, better respect the code. Ain't no sleeping in no Sunday. If it's about the money, then my song go. When I walk in, so yeah, break that. It's unanimous, high pocket.
When I walk in, better get in check. You're looking at a bad, nothing less.
Walk, 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 walk.
Oh, and we also have pizza, by the way, and vegan options for any vegans here.
Pivot, walk.
Ooh, don't take it personal. You won't be the first to know. Just might be the first to go. Just might be. Ooh, don't take it personal. You won't be the first to know. Just might be the first to go. Just might be.
It's hard to see a type of girl like me. The stars truly, they want me to succeed. They doubt, they sleep, they keep on telling me I ain't going nowhere. Baby, wait till you see money everywhere. When I'm on tour, I let you know. And what's in store, I let you know. And when I'm on, I let you know. They'll sing my songs and they gon' dance along. Look at me go.
Yes, that's right. So I'm just gonna elaborate on that. Continue on that is the wireless connectivity is human right. Right now,
I get the groove. I'll take my chances on the road. 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 Don't let them slow you. You know you're getting close. You wanna be golden. Keep on doing what you do. Life open stores and can nobody close and learn from every moment. Baby, you can push through. When you're on tour, you let them know. And what's in store, you let them know. And when you're on, they let you know. They'll sing your songs and they'll come down. Ooh, look at you go. Ooh, you got the groove. Look at you work. You got the groove. I'll take my chances on the road. 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 Take my chances. Take my chances. Take
Tell me something deep, something that won't fade away. The alteration always feels like a goodbye to me.
I give you every piece of me, 'cause my energy is so divine. Healing for you, but slightly misleading to me. Velvet blue, blue. I'm gonna waste my time here waiting on you. Velvet blue, velvet blue, blue. I'm gonna waste my time here waiting on you. Velvet blue.
Connection lost. Connected.
Your body's beat by the window seat. Little eyes look high up in the blues and stars. Wanna surrender to those cosmic skies, whispering spells about what it means to be wise. Glittering whites and shooting comets, milky bands that speak golden solitude. Intergalactic Janet, Janet from another planet. Intergalactic Janet, Janet from another planet. Energy speaks. Listen while you sleep, let it clarify. Knowledge you've always known, baby, you're under all these clouds. Mystifying, terrifying, life on the ground. Take you to the place where gravity falls. Take you to the place where you feel the cold. You know who to
Check, check, check. Check, check. Check, check. Test, test. Test, test. We're going to get started in just a moment, everybody. So if everyone can, if you haven't grabbed pizza already, pizza's in the corner. Grab some pizza and find yourself a seat. Check, check.
Go, baby, go, baby, go, baby. Hope that God forgives your sins, your sins, your sins. Go, baby, go, baby, go, baby. Gotta keep moving on, even though you're not here, not here, not here, not here. Go, baby, go, baby, go.
Check, check. Check, check. Test, test. Test, test.
Yeah, it was a stupid ox thing too, though. Oh, I know. But I don't know why they were not plugged in.
Do you want them?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. It's just because one of the receivers is feeding from that other one. Wait, like this?
She's ill.
Yeah. Like this? Check. Check.
I think on one. I think yeah, like that.
We're gonna keep this over here.
No.
Oh, June for you. I'm just kidding.
You'll probably be.
Yeah, we'll get it started. Well, we're gonna do like you guys have those mics and then
We're sharing a mic.
just for receiver purposes. All right, we're getting started in just a moment. If everyone can, go ahead and find yourself a seat. If you are planning to stick around, chat, network, chop it up, yap, I'm going to ask you to please hang out outside. One more time.
Respectfully.
Yeah. All right, everyone, the next panel is starting right now. I'm going to give everyone 10 seconds, like my mom does, to wrap it up. If everyone can, if you are planning to stick around and just chop it up, chat, if you're meeting up with an old friend, hang out outside. Otherwise, we have a really great panel coming right up, like right now. All right, give it up for our panelists. Hi, everyone. My name is Annalisa. I do social over at LUKSO Foundation. Really excited for this panel. This is Bringing Passion on Chain Mythbusters. Go ahead. I am going to go ahead and pass the mic over so everyone can share your intros. What do you do? Where you're from?
Hi, I'm Greg, CEO of FWB. I hail from New Orleans, Louisiana. That good? Yeah, okay.
Malcolm Levy, founder of Refraction. I hail from Toronto.
What's going on? I'm Vega, founder of Streamgate, LA, I guess.
Keisha, founder of the Bear Baddies. I'm from Canada.
All right, this is a 40-minute panel. I have a whole list of questions. I would like to hear from each and every single one of you, but we'll kick things off with what is the biggest misconception about Web3 that you hear from? Can I get that microphone? Hello? Okay, this is better. What's the biggest misconception about Web3 that you currently hear from Web2 creators?
Oh, it's only casino all the time, and that it's actually not a place for creators, and they think that unless they're launching a token or a meme coin or doing something to fuck over their community, then there's not a place for them.
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, it's really been kind of a challenge bringing on different creators in the space, especially in music, I would say. Most people are open to it, but then, you get this constant news cycle of, one thing after another that really, it doesn't speak to like what we do and with Refraction or what FWB does as well. And so I think like our ongoing kind of goal and what we end up doing is kind of like demystifying that.
Biggest misconception is that it's a pyramid scheme. Everybody thinks it's a pyramid scheme. Everything's a pyramid scheme. So.
Yeah, pyramid schemes, scams lots, and also bad for the environment. Hear that one a lot.
And very soon they're going to feel like they're going to see how all those roadblocks are going to come. Because you're already kind of saying that, like.
Can we get someone from AV to fix the additional sound coming from the other room? But we're going to keep the conversation going. But so I've heard that a lot too as a Web2 to Web3 creator. It's a scam. It's a pyramid scheme. It's a casino. I guess, what do you tell your friends or those folks with what you're doing at Friends with Benefits or what you're doing at Refraction? Yeah, how do you demystify that to someone who is a complete novice to Web3?
I actually think it's quite hard to demystify it, because I think as an industry on whole, that activity is actually really encouraged. I think a lot of people are chasing liquidity on their chains, and it's very clear in order to get that liquidity, you have to do those types of things. So I tell them to be patient. I think that the tooling is really great, and I think the infrastructure is really good. But I think as an industry as whole, we need to set the example of how it's not doing that. And for every protocol or L1 or L2, I hear that they're just like focusing on that versus focusing on builders. I think it just continues to set us back time and time again. So I find it very hard to encourage people to come on chain right now until we essentially get our shit together as a industry.
So for us, I think the biggest way we've done it is just by having people come to our events. So I would say probably about 50% of our audience is not a Web3 audience, especially when we're doing stuff in the bigger cities, like, you know, taking over public records in New York, things like that, Carbone in Paris. And what happens, you know, because we have a partnership with Resident Advisor for the World in terms of ticketing, and, you know, people just buy tickets and come, right? Because they recognize the music, the art, what we're actually doing. And then they actually find out after that that it's on chain. And so I think like the biggest thing we do to demystify it or to speak around it is just tell people to come and see what's going on. And when they do, they see that it can be totally different than all these kind of like weird, you know, categorizations that get made all the time. You know, I think there's a huge difference almost now between people who think about the culture of the blockchain and people who think about things like crypto. It's like, it's very different.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I guess just working or partnering with like what people would call Web2 companies that they're familiar with, so that we can kind of, you know, take a step back into their world and connect the two.
The deepen side of building these.
What is going on? Anyway, so yeah, I mean, doing that, like Streamgate, you know, works with Spotify API, so everybody uses Spotify, and I've, you know, done things with Zynga, and everybody's like, well, I played Farmville, so I get that. But I agree with Greg. Like right now, we're kind of cooked. Like the president launched a shitcoin, right? Like that's where everybody's mind's at. They're like, oh, well, everything's meme coins, and we are, you know, trapped in the casino. So I guess right now we're cooked, but usually it's familiarizing with stuff.
I think we have a little bit of a different interaction with people because we bring them to our events or we run into them outside of like on the street, at the doctor's office when we're wearing the Barabati merch. And it's like people have fun, think it's cute, or excited by it. So we don't really get so much of the reception as like it's cooked in the meme coin stuff, but definitely the scam. And the one thing I always try and say is that whatever you think about it, at the end of the day, its main like core purpose is to democratize access to finance, right? Or not even just finance, democratize access to opportunities. Because other than the perils that traditional systems face, those obviously still exist in crypto. But at the end of the day, in developing countries or even in, you know, places like North America, for very valid reasons or invalid, people don't have access to bank accounts. They don't have access to financial freedom. They don't have access to being able to make their own choices about their investments or about being able to be, you know, maybe a creator online or the myriad of different ways there is to make money in the space. So I always really try and, you know, talk about the kind of like the core purpose and how it does democratize that access. And especially not just, it makes sense obviously for developing countries, but I don't think people realize as well, like even within North America or more developed countries, these people still face issues.
Thanks, y'all. So I want to focus on, I guess, more so like music or like musicians, like that area of creators in this space. There are tools that already exist in Web 2 that a lot of artists hone in on. For example, I don't know, like Spotify, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, all of those. I mean, those are just like service level tools, but even tools for artists. Is Web 3 currently equipped with the tools for bringing those Web 2 artists into Web 3 to succeed? And what, like, Oh, we got a yes and a no. All right, I'm going to hear you, and then I want to hear from you.
Rayhan, fact check me. First music NFT bought by Trevor by Jock Green, like early days. Yeah. 2021. Foundation. Yeah. So I think here's where I might like counter your no before you even say it. I think it depends what you're looking for, right? What I think sets FWB vastly apart from a lot of Web3 is that we were creative culturalists who went in search of technological solutions for our creative practices. That is ultimately like what brought us into the space and all the projects that come from it. The co-founders of Mesh are back there, and they're approaching ticketing in a way that is very culturally sound for people who want better engagement in live events. It just happens to be on Web3, right? And that they were incubated within our DAO. So I think that the systems kind of what you were saying, democratize opportunity is like such a great thing, and I might steal that and credit you on other panels. I think what Web3 does and blockchain does is that it makes things incrementally and then vastly better for artists. I think a lot of people mistake the NFT for JPEGs or whatever, but that put a lot of money in creative pockets that would have never had access to that or that much of a percentage. So if you're creative and you're like, cool, I know what DistroKid works like, and I know how the tools work, I can engage with my fans and capture that revenue, which makes it better. It doesn't solve everything, right? I don't think that we're going to find a Spotify killer in that thing, but you might have an artist that's like, just stream my music here first. So I think if you know how to use the tools, and one of the things that the space has done extraordinarily well is put those opportunities, as you said, in their hands. It's just unfortunately makes more work for the artist, but it also gives them more control. It's not perfect by any means, but I think it's vastly better than if you were to ask an artist where things were looking in 19 or 2020.
Me? Oh yeah. So I think as it currently sits, it's not good for music yet, and it will be, and we're going to get in that direction, and hopefully we bring all the pieces together. But as it sits, we're kind of in this place where if you're a music artist, your pipeline and your goal is to get like a smaller amount of super fans. Before you wanted to have millions of streams. Right now you're like, if I can just have 100 people that would pay, $100 for this piece of, music art or whatever people would like to call it, like that will benefit me more in the long run than struggling to get these millions of fans. And when you look at it that way, then you're kind of like placing your livelihood in the hands of 100 people that then think they're more important to your creation than they actually are. And you have these people, like I've witnessed it by being in NFT communities and other communities. It just becomes this thing that's like, hey, me, I'm the community. You should be listening to what I say, and you should be making music like this or doing it like that. And when we get into that, it puts the artist in a bad spot. And that's where it's at right now. And it will get better just as we continue to build things. But we kind of need the streaming platforms as they sit right now, and we need to bring them into Web3 because most people are not going to stop listening how they listen to music. Like we're going to get the 100 people, per artist. That's cool. But if I'm just a regular person and I got to like now listen to 90% of my music catalog here, and then like, oh yeah, I do like this one artist, I'm going to go to this random like website that kind of works because it's new technology and I don't really know how to use it yet. And I'm going to go out of my way during my day to take like 20 minutes of a process to listen to one song. Like people are not going to do that in a mass scale. So we're just not there yet.
Is there a way where like the tech exists where you can like link your Spotify profile or like Apple Music profile with yeah.
That's what we're doing. That's what Streamgate is doing.
They do those tools do exist, but sorry, those tools do exist, but yeah, it's tough trying to convince all your Web2 friends to get into it.
Just to counter on that. I like the arts have always had patrons, and so I think at like any level, and you can see it in the art world too, that patron will be like, I love that painting, but it's blue and the green in my drapes. It would be better matte. It's like, I'll buy it for $500,000. No, $1 million. No, 1.5 million. All right, we'll change it and we'll get it on your wall. So like, I think that it's naive to think that art doesn't have people and people who are not creative funding those things and the compromises that artists have to make. I think that if you do have super fans, if you only have to rely on 100 people to fund your art and you have to balance that, I think that that's just always been part of the game. I don't actually think that's a Web3 problem. I think the problem might be that you might have more direct access to it because you're in a Discord with them and they're kind of challenging you. But I always think there's going to be compromises if you're living off creativity and you're not commercially successful. So it's, I think, as much as you can stomach and what you're willing to do for that. But I don't necessarily, what you're saying to me doesn't sound broken. It sounds like that's the model, and maybe living off creativity is very hard when you're very reliant on anyone to fund it. It's not like you just do it and people give you money.
You have something, or I have another question? All right, cool. Well, this question's for Malcolm. So I know we actually recently did our artist grants with Refraction DAO. And I'm curious as to like what successes that you've seen through running those programs and onboarding visual artists that maybe have never had a crypto wallet in their lives into Web3. I'm just curious about.
For sure. Just one point. This is a really interesting discussion on the music side too. No, I'll answer it. But it strikes me. It's almost like also a conversation of like how people look at the framework. Like you can look at the same framework and get two different visions out of it, right? One can be looking at it as, okay, it's more, one can be looking at it like, how does it scale? And one can be looking at it as, how is it sustainable within certain aspects, right? And I think it's interesting because I think sometimes the conversation actually comes back to like what frame of mind you're looking at it through and how it's working in those cases. And I think that's kind of interesting because that also kind of shows some of the blockers and things that come up, and also how it's communicated, right? Like the example like that just happened, where can you connect Spotify to? Oh, you can use your universal profile for it. But like, that's not being done on any kind of scale. It's like a communication thing, etc. But that also leads me into what I would say is really interesting in the creative program. So I think probably it was the first time there was like a major onboarding of digital creative artists onto LUKSO. So we did the call out. We have a fairly large community of artists, and beyond that, there's a lot of artists that just kind of follow us on different social media, etc. And the response was wild. To be honest, like with like the curatorial team looking at it, the biggest problem is that there were too many good artists for it. Like it was, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes you're dealing with the last, few, and you're just like, okay, this one will work, and I think it'll be good. Let's curate this extra piece to make it perfect. In this case, it was like way overwhelming. I'm going to say there was like 300% of artists that could have been in the program. Why? I think that with regard to what LUKSO does and how LUKSO speaks about things, it comes from a bit more of like a humanistic perspective. So I think a lot of artists are actually quite interested in understanding what was going on there, what's happening there. And for something like Refraction, where we already kind of consider in the same way, it worked out really well. It's like been going great so far. And the most interesting part is like watching people on board, getting their UP, like actually start getting involved. The work start to come out in the next few weeks, but from what I've seen so far, they're phenomenal.
Okay, well, this is just a question that I'm curious about, and just to tie it in with bringing passion on chain. I mean, this is a really interesting panel. Each of you have you have either founded or you work with just amazing orgs that, these are big names that we see here up on the screen. I want to know, what was your life like? What was your Web2 life like? Like, what's your villain origin story that brought you into bringing your passion on chain? And we'll start with Keisha, actually. We'll work our way up so we don't have to keep on going like this.
I had a friend that was like incessantly telling me, you need to buy crypto, you need to buy crypto, you need to buy crypto. Took me a really long time, well, not a long time, but I finally did. He added us all into a group chat together, like me and all his other friends in real life that he was like trying to bring. We started getting into NFTs together. Then I got into Olympus DAO. I bought the top in April of 2021, cashed out my mutual funds, cashed out everything, went all in on crypto in the top. And then obviously was forced to become a community member after that. And then I obviously read up about Ohm, and I broke my knee, and I was able to, I was forced to take 7 weeks off of work. And so in those 7 weeks, I really was able to dial into Discord and like make a bunch of connections. And I ended up getting my first job in Web3. And then that's actually where the origins kind of the Bear Baddies, because as Barachain, it started within the Ohm off topic Discord. Like it was people that were a part of the community went on and built this NFT project that has now turned into Barachain. But that's where I found my community in the space. And I think community is actually the biggest reason why you stay here. But then later on down the line, sometime I ended up getting hacked or drained, and I lost my Barachain NFTs, and they were like worth like $100,000 at the time. And the community that I had, like the friends, then they reached out and they're like, hey, like I've seen you've been talking about Bear Baddies. Do you want to make this a real thing? I seen you lost your bears. So my villain origin story is like really, really bad things happen. But if those bad things didn't happen, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have been able to meet all these incredible women and all these incredible people all over the world.
I don't know that it's such a villain story, but I've been trying to make music for like 10 years. And I guess, you know, people say the talent's there, like it sounds good, whatever. But as myself in the traditional market, over that 10 years, maybe a profit of $3,000 to $5,000 off of music, which is not sustainable, or you can't do that for a living. So I really got into Web3 with CloneX because they had like virtual, you know, digital personas, avatars, and things like that, 3D characters that could be animated. And I figured it might be a good opportunity to instead think of rebranding and putting music out as this character instead of doing it as myself. And so I did that. And like within the first year, that character did 6 figures off of music. So that's when, you know, to me, it became serious. And I realized like the power of branding, you know, mixed with technology. And so now I'm just here every day.
Those are both incredible stories. So for me, yeah, in, you know, my kind of story around electronic music and digital art goes back to when I was very young, founding New Forms Festival, which is now, you know, 25 years old, and then getting asked to curate the first digital festival for an Olympics and building out at creative apps and so on. That, you know, I was always very interested in digital art and technology and new ways of thinking about it. And then in 2019, I got asked to curate a festival at Public Records, and the pandemic hit. So what ended up happening is the festival went online, and it was going to be in the middle of the summer. And so we called it Refraction around the summer solstice. And then the festival kind of was this decentralized festival globally with different people we knew. And it blew up. It became like the Pitchfork, you know, festival of the month and RA pick of the week and so on and so forth. And right around the same time, a few friends of mine, I'd done a lot of digital art, were starting to mint NFTs on Foundation. And they said, like, Mal, do you want to do this? I said, sure, why not? And I'll give it a try. Like, I'd been interested in the blockchain for a long time. It all seemed to make sense. And people who were collecting, people who were involved, similar to kind of Greg's story, like there was a community around it. Joined FWB around the same time. And, you know, all these people I knew were all involved in this like new creative world. And it made a lot of sense. It was very different than anything I'd seen before, and really, you know, impressive, like really interesting, the type of people, what people were creating, what people were doing. And right around the same time, an old friend of mine, Jess Sloss, was starting Seed Club. And I started talking to him about DAOs, and I found DAOs to be really interesting because New Forms is still a nonprofit to this day. So this idea of collectives and growing collectives was really interesting to me, but one where actual people had ownership long-term made a lot more sense to me. And so we launched new forums, myself, Raf, and Greg. Raf had been the creative director of Vice. Greg had built community for Jordan. And right away, it just blew up. Like hundreds and hundreds of people came in the Discord the first day. We started doing events around the world, and it just, from there, like became what it is today.
I think I'm the only one on here who's not the founder. I'm like the third person to run a DAO, which is both a testament to DAOs and also I find hilarious. All good stories. I can only imagine when you broke your knee, or when you got drained, how awful you felt. And yeah.
That's the truth of an origin story.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the knee was bad because I've never broken a bone before, and I was on crutches for like 9 months. So that whole saga was just bad. But I think losing the money was bad because at that time I didn't know obviously the baddies would become or anything like that.
Yeah.
In that moment, it was like I've been rugged, I've round tripped everything. I literally have nothing to show for being in crypto and like losing my mind for 2 years. And then finally, these NFTs that I've been holding on to for 3 years are worth something. And Verichain's coming out, there's this happening, and they were gone.
Yeah.
So that was definitely like the worst. Like that one, that faced a lot of losses. That one hit me definitely the hardest. But thankfully, I was able to just like fully focus. And the baddies came a whole month later, so I had like a month of stewing.
Amazing. And also like going from 3 to 5K over 10 years. No, your origin story. And then making 6 figures is like insane. Like I think that was the point I was trying to make earlier, where it's like those opportunities is the greatest story of crypto, right? That is like, and I think like that has been so washed out over meme coins, but there was a really amazing period where artists who were grinding for years had this tooling and direct access to fans and the capital to go from 3K to 6. I mean, you must have just been thrilled. My story is a bit different because I didn't go and start something, but my background, I was actually in hospitality, worked for a company called Ace Hotel. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. So I did a lot of early tech as culture partnerships. We commissioned the first ever 3D printed black dress for ETHDenver tees, which maybe some people have seen it. And so we did a lot of early stuff. Anybody here knows what Droit de Suite is? Any Europeans? Essentially, it's the European governments. If you make artwork, you get a percentage of those sales in perpetuity. In America, they tried to pass that same law by Congress, didn't pass. They tried to do it in California, didn't pass. And it's always been mind-numbing to me, especially for a lot of artist fans. When I first read about the blockchain revolution, the Tapscott father and son duo, is about energy, and then I read smart contracts, and it like clicked for me that this was artists' rights on chain. So I convened the first ever Arts and Blockchain Summit with director of Freeze America in 2016 and 17, and we ended it was like, how do you get provenance on chain? Not saying that we called NFTs, but then with that, and so the pandemic hit, and hotels and events completely evaporated, and my job went. I was meeting with someone who was like, hey, you can go do what you did for hotels in Web3. And I was like, really? And I was like, yeah, they're going to need people like us sit in this room, and what Mal was saying about artists or creatives or things like that. And so I joined a company, and our first project that we launched it on FWB. So I joined as a member, and similar to Malcolm, I got in there and I was like, why are all my friends in here and all these creatives I love in here, and who are all these other people? So I started as a member, and then like built our events program, and then took over our raising our money and co-founded our annual festival. And then when the last guy running it stepped down, the community asked me to take over it. But for me, it's always been about artist rights and artist control. Even if the tooling is imperfect, even if it's not that, I think that you can look at a wide swath of artists who can say their lives have fundamentally changed because of blockchain. And now it's just about scaling it.
Thanks everyone for sharing your stories. I thought about this question on the fly as we were talking about it, or as you were sharing your story as well, about how your wallet got drained. And I think from the sounds of it, we've all been in Web3 for survived bear market, bull market, bear market, bull market, and so on. We've seen, I think when I entered the space in like end of 2021, that was when DAOs were really, really, really hot. Everything was a DAO. But also then bear market hit, and we started to see communities dissolve. So I'm sure many of you have seen like some of your friends or different communities, people like starting to lose faith in Web3. I want to know what would have to be true in order to bring those people back, or yeah, we can start with that. Anyone?
I think it goes back to what we were saying before. It's like we have to get away from the casino culture. I think there's a lot of people just that were really idealistic about this that just really hate the space now. They just hate it. You know, I saw some guy like launched a meme coin and killed himself last week. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like, why am I like, how, you know, he lost his last $500 and you're like reading this and you're like, what the fuck? Like literally what the, I was supposed to be programmable money and now it's this, like, it's so far from that. So again, it goes back to my first question. It's like, I think we collectively as an industry have to decide where we want to point our attention and resources. And so it's like projects like you guys are doing with Refraction, where it's like, cool, we want to actually focus on creatives and put support around that. And I think it's focusing on builders. We're relaunching our membership at the end of March with a program called Friends with Builders. That's like 25 different infrastructure partners. It's going across the ecosystem. Think of us as like a Switzerland, but we're working with like Base and AWS and a bunch of others that I can't name right now. But the idea is that like we are trying to rebuild it. And if anyone's been following what we've been doing, we're doing a proof of concept right now with World. We just launched it. We did a hackathon in New York a couple weeks ago. We're down in Buenos Aires right now with them. And we got like 40 incredible submissions when they were expecting single digits. So to honestly, I think we've lost a lot of great people. But I think for us to get the next gen people, it's on us to signal what we're going to do and then do projects, talk about topics, fun things like that. Otherwise, people just feel like they're coming in, providing exit liquidity and bad vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very accurate. I mean, the reality is that historically, you always have ups and downs. There's always bull markets and bear markets and times where something's more popular and then it's less popular, you know? One day it was DAOs, then it was meme coins, then it's AI, whatever it might be in between. And, all of that is what it is. Those are just hype cycles. And when you're trying to create something different than that, you just got to ignore it. When the bear hit, it was hard. Yeah, the most recent. Okay. So let's say in 2022 into 2023, like I remember the moment where people stopped talking about ideas like emergence. And it was just like, what's your burn? And that makes a lot of sense in that context because that's really what was going on. And, for us, it was just continue to do exactly what we're doing and be sustainable at it and figure out like an actual flywheel that made sense, which we did. So I mean, what we're doing now to bring people back is, launching IRL, like launching the token, launching a blockchain, the IRL chain, and our protocol, and really inviting people all around the world to become part of that, because it's real. Like, I think the best way to bring people back on chain is to do things that are actually real. Everything's so wildly speculative and nonsensical most of the time, and just based on these like random narratives, like what is that at the end of the day? And like when someone talks to me about that, I can't really argue if they're like, hey, like what's up with this like meme coin thing? I'm like, yeah, you're right. But that's not what I do. That's not what we do. That's not what so many people I know do. And so I think at the end of the day, like the only way it's going to change is by actually having initiatives that don't do that, that are actually real, that actually are trying to like, contribute to like the blockchain as part of culture and part of a greater culture and not just this kind of like weird random hype cycle.
Yeah, we lost a lot of good people. Some of those people, they're never coming back. But I think for most of those people that are never coming back, they came into the space throwing money at things with the idea that it would make them more money. And so their money was dependent on something else completely. And so you have to come in and you have to do things that are dependent on your own wishes and beliefs. And if it's not dependent on somebody else's stuff, then you'll still win in the end if you keep building. So I think it's to spotlight the idea that there is, or this is a good place to build things if you're approaching it with the right intention. and I think intention is everything. Or to just come and take part in something that you firmly just believe in. There are a lot of people that aren't necessarily building on LUKSO, but that believe in LUKSO. And so I feel that's still a good reason to be around. So those two things.
I think everybody made some really good points. I definitely think that what Malcolm said with community or culture is super, super important. I think providing things for culture, and even like with musicians, with artists, that's a culture within itself. And even what Greg said, where he's like, why are all my friends here? Why are all these people here? Is I think in order to bring people back, is at the heart of it is honestly community. I'm the only person that's left from everybody that I learned about crypto with, and I fully believe it's because I had a community, right? And I think that's what a lot of like, obviously there's speculative reasons, but when you look at Barachain, you look at people saying Ooga Booga in a Discord for 2 years over something fake, or you look at a silly NFT or a silly meme coin, and then you go into the community and you see what people are talking about, and it just seems like people are kind of searching for connection, and that's kind of like what they found here or anything like that. And I think community and culture go hand in hand, but it's like so many people that completely ignored me or gave me weird glances when I would talk about crypto so many years ago. Now there are people that don't care about any of that stuff anymore because they think that what the baddies is doing is super cool, or they enjoy it, or they just think it's cute, or for whatever reason, or they just want to support me and the people that they know that are part of the community, because it's community, right? Like when you have something that has culture and has something that people feel a connection to or feel a sense of community with, I honestly think kind of a lot of those extras just start to fall away, right? Because in order to bring the, maybe we're not going to get those people back, but if they have, a reason to come back, or they feel a strong connection to support somebody, or, be a part of a culture, or be a part of, even just, I think none of those things really matter when it comes down to just wanting to be a part of something. And I think that's like kind of like the biggest thing. And I think that's really the big shift that we're kind of seeing in the space with all of these panels that have been going on the past few months, especially this past year, is I think, and treating community not like a means to an end, or treating community like a product. Treating community and moving with intention, I think, is the most important thing. Intention and being genuine and treating a community and remembering why your community is here, is I kind of think that like network effect will just grow, and then people will, they want to come and they want to be a part of it.
But I do want to quote Bobby Hundreds in his book, This Is Not a T-Shirt. He says, people over product, and community really is everything. It's like, I feel like I repeat myself when I say this, it's not a buzzword, either is culture, but yeah, community is really what's going to bring people into this space and keep people into this space. Since we're almost at time, let's see, in one sentence, give me your spiciest hot take when it comes to creators in Web3, creator economy, whatever you want. Give me your spiciest hot take, something that you didn't, or it doesn't have to be a spicy hot take. Yeah, give me your biggest hot take. Anything. Me? No, you guys first, go. Yeah.
A bunch of creators during the last bull cycle were never creators before the last bull cycle, and will never be after.
Ooh, that was crazy. Here, I'm still thinking.
I guess my spiciest take on creators would be that I don't even think we've scratched the surface of NFTs. I think what is possible with NFTs in ways for creators, artists, musicians, actors, any type of creative you are, not only just like what you can do with the technology, but the ways that you can connect and build your community, or grow or interact with your fans, or engage with your audience as we move to this super digital world, like with TikTok being the leader in consumer habits and consumer spending, is the possibilities are honestly boundless with NFTs. And I don't even think we've even like scratched a surface of what's possible with them. That was way longer than one second. It works. In my head.
Controversial. In the space, we have a bunch of people yapping about things, and they're just like now labeled as streamers. But I don't think that yappers are creators, and people should stop idolizing them as creators because they're just yapping.
Man, Malcolm. I think, to misquote my guy Steve Albini, creators cannot abdicate financial responsibilities and business responsibilities and then cry foul when it doesn't work. But it's on us to show them the path because they see the world in different ways. So both sides can't point fingers at each other and say, you're the reason why this doesn't work. Everyone needs to take responsibility and play their piece in the game.
Thank you. All right, mine. Well, this is just the one that's at the top of my head, and I talk about it all the time, but I think that podcast equipment should be 10 times more expensive because not everyone needs a podcast. And I will leave you all with that. Everyone give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you so much. Great conversation, you guys. Check, check. All right, we are going to kick off our final panel of the day in about 5 minutes. It is Identity Better With or Without with moderator Emily from Hype and everyone else.
Why don't you just let go and quiet down your ego? Don't complain about finance. I know your daddy weren't a real man. Go ahead and live your dreams. To me, you're stronger than a whole team. I know you can't relax, and you don't want me to know that. I see you look real hard. You wanna help your friends, but trust me, baby, you don't owe them. Don't take on people's problems. I wanna see you smile, even when you think I'm angry. It's true, it might take a while, but it's between you and me. Listen, no, no. I know you check my texts. Don't you worry about my ex. I might be on his mind, but I'll never reply. Remember on the weekend, I said I'll make some changes, and you said you'd do the same thing. And I don't wanna fight my king. I heard you when you was weak. You caught me on my knees. Don't pressure me for some kids, and I won't pressure you for marriage. I know it's never the right time, but we gotta do things on our time. Sometimes I still doubt myself, but at least now I love myself. And I am quite emotional, that's why you can't get close at all. So I start to push away the ones that love me, cause I'm scared that they might walk away. I'm not perfect, so I try every day and I grow a little bit. Read a little more so I can educate my kids. Eat from my soul and cleanse my spirit. Pray cause I'm ready for the bloom of the city. Since serenity is all that I need. Sometimes we fall in love. Love is always enough. Sometimes we fall in love. Love is always enough. Sometimes we fall in love. Love is always enough. Where some, no,
Eat, pray, love, grow. Eat, pray, love, grow.
Can't get you out of my head. 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 Can't get you out of my head.
I don't want any more pressure. Wanna feel like it's just you and me. I can hear you now. I won't let you down. So will you come around? I can see the world around us. I can feel it now. Look to the light.
Okay, mic check. Guys, we are going to get started on the final panel. If you can all take a seat, please. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Take me away to some kind of place.
Okay, guys, can we all please take a seat because we need to leave the venue soon. So we need to get this panel started. Guys, can everyone take a seat? Everyone, hello. Guys, I am trying to MC. Stop making my life. Annalisa.
Down. I know. Sit. Respectfully, sit the F word down. Next panel coming up right now. If you are planning to yip and yap, then step your booty outside. Otherwise,
I'm tired.
all right, amazing.
Hello, hello. Do we only have one mic? Wow, I have so much power. Okay, so I have this expectation from Louis to make this as controversial, spicy as possible. So hopefully we can turn this into a little debate, maybe a fight. No violence, though, please. So I think the premise of this panel is identity, and apparently half of you are pro-privacy, and the other half of you are pro-social reputation. So can I get a raise of hands on who is on which side so I understand how this war is forming? That's what who wrote this?
I think we're roughly about that. I mean, put your hands up if you're pro-social. I mean, I'm pro like social identity, like having your face. You know. Okay.
Okay, who's pro-privacy and being anonymous?
I'm pro-choice.
All right, so maybe we start there because that was actually my answer. Like, why can't we have both, Louis? Like, why was it one or the other? So I'd love to dig into the tech and the nuance of, is that actually possible? Is it option-based? And maybe we start with you, Evan, since you are pro-choice, and I'm assuming you're building towards that.
Indeed. GM friends. My name's Evan McMullen, co-founder of Privado ID. Thank you so much to the LUKSO fam and friends for having us today. As I mentioned earlier, Emily, I am pro-choice in the war on identity, meaning that I think the selective disclosure or ability to decide what we share and when we share it is an essential element of the human condition and our existence here on Earth. I think with novel technologies such as ZK proofs and the like, we now have entered a new era of disclosure where we can prove things about ourselves, but we don't need to be data exhibitionists doing it in public for the world to see as the default and only option that we have. You know, if the only thing I know about Louis is his public key, we can only do two things together. Right? If in our sort of standard on-chain universe, we can allocate a treasury together, we can spend money, and we can do over-collateralized lending. But if I want to know anything more about him, I'm going to need some more data. What language does he speak? What time zone is he in? What are his subject matters of expertise? And so in order to coordinate more than just the most basic of casinos, I believe that we need more data, and that involves consent.
So let's actually hand it off to Privy because I see Privy everywhere. Like every time I'm connecting to Kaito and checking my apps or connecting to a new dApp, there's like powered by Privy there. And it seems like as a developer, which I'm not, you can choose to integrate it with social profiles or on-chain data. Have you noticed what people are opting into as builders for users?
Yeah, so excited to be here. I'm Max, I'm the COO of Privy. And you summed it up really nicely. So with Privy, we give developers the option to choose how they want to onboard their users. So an app like Zora can let users onboard with their wallet. No need to link any personal identifier information beyond that. You could be as private as you'd like, or if you're using Kato and want a yap, you can link your Twitter and go wild. I am very out there. A lot of my personal self is on chain. I think that's like a really cool design space that we're starting to explore and we're just scratching the surface of, but I use Rodeo just about every day at this point, posting selfies of myself. Those pictures are on chain. It's a really cool new spin on what happens if you put something like Instagram on crypto rails and creators can get rewarded and earn from creating engaging content. So very excited to see lots of new design spaces opening up when you start bringing more of yourself on chain. But privacy is like very core to the way many builders in crypto build. And I think it's important to facilitate that.
Amelia, you're the builder of Soulmates. So how much of my data do I need to bring on chain for you to help me find my next partner or my best friend?
How public does it need to be to take it late?
None. And so, just for people to know what Soulmates is, so Soulmates, we're building a new way for people to connect that's focused on in-person first. So what we've built is a matching agent and a bracelet that essentially tracks IRL connections. I sort of index a little bit more towards what Evan's saying is that you don't need to have your data on chain to be able to meet with people. I don't like the idea of having to put myself on public display for everybody to see that I'm single or I'm in an open relationship or what have you. I think that's a kind of an invasion of privacy for the use case that I'm building for, right? I think there's other use cases that having social capital online is very useful, but I don't believe you need it for finding the soulmate.
VJ, I'm going to hand it off to you because you're a builder, and with Superfluid, you also built a social app. I'd love to hear your take on how much data is needed or how much identity is integral to, I guess, the future of on-chain economies.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm VJ. I'm the head of product at Superfluid, and I think Superfluid is in a unique position. So it's a money streaming protocol, basically meaning you can build smarter payments into apps where you get paid every second, and that's like it's a cool thing. It's very novel. Like people don't really understand it unless you show it to them. So I had the great idea of, as an infrastructure team, going out there and starting to try and build some apps and seeing how we can get it in front of people's eyeballs. And in doing so, you know, built a social app. It's obviously one of the interesting kind of domains of crypto. But I think essentially with all infrastructure stuff that people come up with, like people who are building infrastructure want people to like need or, you know, desire or demand the kind of infrastructure they're building much more than people actually need that infrastructure, you know, for the most part. And so I think like only by actually building an app end to end do you see like for this exact use case, what is the minimum set of things I need to do? And chances are it's probably not to integrate like, you know, this full stack, like, you know, decentralized system of kind of bring all your data on chain. Like for a lot of apps, you can just have all the data off chain. Like it doesn't actually affect anything. You know, maybe composability between social apps at some point in time makes sense. But I think for most people, like they want that to be true far more than it is true. And you can actually build like an incredible end-to-end experience for people and solve a specific problem for a specific app, you know, and a specific social graph without needing any of that composability. And I think like, you know, we're still not at the point in the maturity curve where it makes sense to worry all that much about like, you know, what is the exact right standard for thinking about how this data needs to be architected for us to move in the future, because a lot of those things you can basically progressively do rather than try and figure out up front.
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Louis, the head of experience at LUKSO, the social blockchain. I mean, I agree with every point made here, and like LUKSO, although is building a decentralized kind of social operating system, I just believe that the world that I would like to live in is a world where we can have ownership, privacy, but also socialize. And like, I think when you look at the landscape of any apps that our parents or real humans actually use, I know that like bringing in real humans is a very cliche quote, and I'm not going to sit here speaking about the next billion, maybe the next 50 would be great. I think what's really important is just to understand the psychology of reputation and the sort of applications that we actually want to interact with daily and actually rely on too. And like when you look at the longevity of relying on the sort of reputation that you build over time, it's almost vital that, you know, you can give it the data that you believe should be attached to that reputation. And attaching anything to reputation in this space kind of doesn't really work. There isn't really a fundamental default to build a profile, to build an identity of your choosing. It can still be anonymous, but, you know, like for myself, I'm fully doxed. And I just want to know that I have ownership. And when I interact with these like accounts through like a smart account, the app that I'm interacting with this reputation, with this identity, can simply ask, you know, what kind of data it needs. Like if I'm working with soulmates and I want to interact and give it specific data about my social graph on chain, which could help, like maybe in some scenarios. I don't think you need to be on chain to find a soulmate also. But it would be nice to have the option of like, hey, I actually have this reputation that I really care about on chain. And as I go to work with these sort of applications, I can now actually pick and choose what data I'd like that app to access. Yeah, and right now there isn't a unified solution to this. Okay. Emily, we both know the answer. One more standard is the answer. Emily's question is, do we actually have a solution to this? Well, there's a lot of, I mean, can I moderate with you?
So I think we can all agree that fragmentation is a nightmare and that we are all exhausted of filling out forms and logging in. I mean, in order to be in this room today, we had to undergo that undignified process yet again. I'm sure plenty of you are out there on your phones doing the exact same thing through the rest of this week. And that's why at Privado ID, what we care about deeply is addressing fragmentation with a flexible framework that allows us to incorporate multiple levels of disclosure. Exactly as Lou was describing, no one wants to sit there and check and uncheck boxes for GDPR disclosures or disclosures of different applications. Like that just sounds like a lot of work. So I would refer us back to perhaps a little bit of an OG document, but the 7 laws of identity. If you guys have checked this out, highly recommend. This is came out of Microsoft a number of years ago, but it's basically a set of best practices that we can follow if we are trying to minimize risk and harm to human beings in identity systems. That includes things like minimum disclosure, being able to execute against the minimum amount of data required, as opposed to hoarding as much as you possibly can in onboarding and then deciding what to do with it later. It also includes the right of consent. And so what this, sort of Lou was alluding to earlier is I want the ability to decide in a not laborious way who I want to show up as where. On-chain, this becomes, or has historically become, a pretty flattened thing, right? If I put my data on-chain, I forfeit consent. And that's why, in terms of technical solutions, things such as evolutions of zero-knowledge proofs, FHD, and other privacy-preserving technologies allow us to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I want to build on the consent point. We're seeing a couple of cool shapes through our customers of trying to bootstrap an identity layer, and we're definitely early. This is going to evolve. There are going to be pockets, but we're seeing an order of magnitude more value from an identity layer than what we saw when we were first getting off the ground with Privy. So the first is like what Farcaster is doing with their social graph. So there's a whole ecosystem of apps being built on Farcaster's social graph at this point. And when a user consents to connect their Farcaster upon signing in, then for free, the developer gets a full social graph for the user, friends. You can post to the Farcaster feed. Farcaster just launched their wallet. And so, any app built on Farcaster can interact with the same underlying wallet. And I think there's going to be so much more cool stuff that gets built from there. Abstract, which is Pudgy Penguins' new blockchain, launched something similar with their global wallet, where any app built on Abstract's network could leverage the same underlying user and wallet, and they're building some really cool things on top of that. And then the third example that I think is really interesting and plays into this privacy idea is how Blackbird is building their ecosystem. And so Blackbird is restaurant loyalty on chain. And so when a user connects their Blackbird account, you can get a user's restaurant history. Like this person went to Carbone 10 times. So they're really loyal to Carbone, and maybe DoorDash might want to, allow Blackbird to integrate it so that they could offer a discount or something. But what Blackbird does on the privacy front that I think is really cool is they separate the user's restaurant behavior from their wallet balance. They actually provision 2 separate wallets under the hood. And so there's like this is what I'm comfortable sharing part of the user's on-chain identity that's fully separated from the user's like net worth. Which has all sorts of privacy bad implications. And so cool things happening across the board. I think everything here is early in the experimental design space, but we're really excited to see all of it.
So I respect that we're still really early, but also you mentioned like 4 apps here, right? So there's Farcaster, there's also Lens that just migrated to a new chain, Blackbird is another app, and all of these require me to sign up. And there's also, these are all new worlds. So how do we connect to the old world, like with Instagram, YouTube? Am I ever going to be able to use one layer to connect all the different parts of my identity and be able to opt in? Or are we just pushing things out into the world and fragmenting things further?
Okay.
You go first.
Thank you. Universal profiles. Like with a UP, I mean, you can also use it to log into Web2 accounts. So you can like actually partner with Web2 accounts to figure out what kind of like details and, I mean, kind of in the same way that an email address works. I guess it's kind of like the ideology behind your point. It's like, imagine if an email address actually had a face or a reputation, and you can actually use that as a login service. That's something that LUKSO is working on.
I actually disagree. I'm going to disagree with some people. I spent a lot of time speaking to quite a few people of like, is there this universal identity? Like, can I break down all the Amelia silos that exist on the internet? No one gave me a good answer. And I think it's because it's still a work in progress, and that's okay because our industry usually is. But when you're trying to build something that is consumer facing and helpful and a good experience, unfortunately, a lot of the data that we do have access to through some of the identity solutions isn't really helpful data. So like, I'd rather have access to X data, but those APIs are very expensive. I'd rather have access to Instagram data. They don't really like giving us that data. So it's fine because you could build POCs and you can build like workarounds on it. But as someone who's been trying to build it, I don't think anyone's actually had a really, really strong answer or solution because, sorry.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
Like yeah, I kind of want to go into your point more because I completely agree. Like, how could you not? And I think going back to what you were saying earlier, Max, and Emily was like, well, that's 4 products. Like, I think there's a balance between like these people building amazing products and then figuring out the primitives afterwards, and then very few people figuring out the primitives and then thinking about the products. And when you look into Web2 and you look at these apps that we actually use, there's a lot of people living in those countries. Like, we here all live in Instagram, we all live in X, if you were to look at them as like cities, countries. And like these product cities and these primitive cities, first of all, there's not a lot of people living in them. Second of all, they don't really cross over, like as Evan's trying to figure out here. And then like they're either really good at the product side, but really bad at the fundamental primitive side. And like, I actually think this might just be a case of time as we currently sit in Web3. A lot of people really care about this for very good reasons.
I'm actually happy to disagree with both of you because I think the tech is a problem that's solved. Like, you know, we've had verified credentials for ages. Like we've had like all these writings you're talking about, like they're old, you know, and when you look at what Microsoft's actually built, like, do any of us actually want to go and sign into every application with like, you know, our LinkedIn profile or like, you know, our Outlook? Like, no one wants to do that. And, you know, I think if you look at the actual apps that have been successful, like the problem isn't that the tech isn't there. The problem is that the incentive isn't there. Like, very few apps benefit from having this connected social graph or allowing their user base to be portable to everyone else's apps. You know, like, you kind of want to keep control of your user base. You know, that is your product market fit. And ultimately, I think, you know, like everyone who's working on infrastructure or many teams who work on infrastructure, like, are thinking far less about, you know, like how to actually help apps achieve product market fit and much more about how to map the technology they're building into, you know, into use cases. And I think when you actually look at the app level, like, they don't want it and they don't need it. I do think that there are some exceptions building out there. You know, I think, for example, like Max was mentioning, that there are kind of teams who are starting to cluster together, for example, around Farcaster, like as an open protocol, because that actually brings value. You know, when you start from like this critical mass, that sort of Farcaster, having built their own critical mass via Warpcast, like, you can actually plug into that social graph when you're building a new app. You know, these people who have wallets, they're very crypto native. They'll actually already have ETH, you know, and now in the social feed, you can click buttons and you can kind of use a crypto app right there. And I think like that kind of, you know, like critical mass focused approach is also kind of critical, like important, because it means that you're actually offering people something along with the technical solution. You're offering them, you know, a go-to-market. You're offering them a better shot at product market fit. And I think that's kind of one of the important missing pieces.
Sorry, who is solving the problem for bringing in the Web2 data? Because if you're disagreeing with me, then tell me where I should go, because I have no effing clue.
I mean, you can bring in Web2 data with Privy, like you know, all of these kind of the APIs that, you know, for example, X's API is really shitty, but like there are a bunch of companies out there who have built like, you know, different kinds of middleware or different kind of caching like that allows you to get that data. You know, the question is like, what do you actually need to build that has that data in it? And like, I think for the most part, if someone has an incentive to bring in that data, like they can get it. It's more that like there aren't actually that many apps that benefit from, you know, having some sort of shared layer together, you know, because each of them can individually go to that. But like, you know, I think if there's an app out there that needs it, then like they'll find the solution, but the incentive isn't there for them to do it.
What do you mean there's no incentive for someone to want to do it if they're building a company around it? Soulmates. So why wouldn't there be an incentive if from you can, but why would you put it on chain tied to an identity? That's what I'm saying, though. So you're agreeing with me.
And LinkedIn, if you yeah, I mean it's the X API is like the worst maintained API of all time, but if you're motivated enough, you can build really powerful experiences on top of it. And the Yaps Cato experience is like one of the best examples. Like the level of analysis and data access they need to stand up such a rich signal graph on like who's capturing mindshare in the crypto X ecosystem is like mind blowing. So the data is out there, and if you're motivated enough, you could build great experiences on top of it. Instagram's API is like much more limited, unfortunately, for reasons that are pretty clear, because Instagram doesn't want to seed, you know, any time spent outside of their app. But Farcaster and the ecosystem of apps that's developing around it, I think can prove to be like a pretty credible alternative to these. And like by design, Farcaster does want people building on their social graph and adding content to the protocol. And they have their X alternative, but you know, the Instagram alternative, the TikTok alternative, the Substack alternative, and whatever else, they're all coming together really nicely. So I'm very optimistic that over time we're going to continue turning knobs, and we're going to start seeing a whole new wave of social apps built on an open protocol layer with better payments and other benefits you get from being on crypto rails. And yeah.
I think 2017 called because it seems like we are building ecosystems, you know, based on closed APIs yet again. If you guys remember back in 2017, I believe was when Facebook shut off their API, and therefore also all of the cottage industries that had been built on top of it. The reason that, you know, that the Instagram API is so limited today are consequence of that. So Emily, you had asked, you know, how are we going to get this data out, or is there a solution to get it out? And to Vijay's point, like it is designed explicitly to prevent that. The data is the, you know, the value for many of these centralized entities. And so understanding that's where 99% of data already exists, we have two choices. One, we can try to extract it manually by individual, as with Vana, or we could do it via a shitty API that we, you know, have to pay a lot of money for. Or to Max's point, we can try to create net new sets of data that are intended to be composable. But all of these instances have pretty limited recourse in terms of what Vijay was mentioning in terms of incentives, right? Why are we doing this other than some VC paid us to, and or there's someone, you know, on the other end expecting an airdrop? And so this is where I think, you know, capital and compliance are the two biggest driving factors. Capital meaning I'm going to get paid, or I'm going to feel really cool with my social capital, and compliance meaning, you know, someone is making me do this. There is some law that prevents me to share data in this form, but I still want to prove it because I have a business reason. And so, you know, we could talk about the future of, you know, personal expression in public spaces, network states, and all of that online, but really, I think it's going to come down to those two factors as the largest, you know, forcing functions.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think to also be real, if we turn it to the audience, like how many of you guys have an Instagram account? How many use Farcaster? How many use Lens? She's a top Lens creator. I think it's beyond capital and compliance. It's also to the user. There's so much more distribution and scale in these existing ecosystems. So the incentive to a user like me versus a builder is going to be very different, which is why I like to ask these questions, like how far are we away from this future? And is it actually just going to be a fragmented future where we have our portable identities, and maybe on the crypto side, sure, it's composable, but there's like a like a boundary of who I am on Instagram versus Farcaster or Lens. I'm gonna go.
I mean, I think that everybody in this space complains endlessly about fragmentation, but we're also at this side event because there's a part of this topic that we all want to listen to and learn about. And when I think in real life events are actually really good scenarios and probably even like soulmates in the future of like when you want to create these sort of experiences and these sort of rooms. I mean, for myself, like trying to protect, you know, who I spend time with and my own energy, like also in the landscape of social media and my identity, I actually do want to enter like meticulous rooms. And maybe sometimes there'll be times where, hey, I want to run around with a pink LUKSO t-shirt and shout about universal profiles all day, but that's not me every day. And some days I want to go into this room, you know, and sit with this panel. So I actually think maybe like, I'm not saying we need more fragmentation. I just think we need to stop hating on fragmentation, because if we had more users in this space, these cities, these worlds, these lands would be a lot busier and this space would feel a whole lot less fragmented. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at one point I like really wished there was like the unified version of Amelia, and there was just like a brain download from the internet, and then I could see all the information about me. But I tried that; it was too hard. No, and I think it's okay to have fragmentation across different experiences, because I don't need all of your information to be able to find a good match. That's just the reality. I don't need your bank statements. I don't need your crypto transactions. I'm good. There's other inputs that are important for creating those matches. So yeah.
I mean, I have one very specific reason why fragmentation is always going to exist in crypto, and that's because as soon as you've launched a token and you put stuff on chain, then like it never disappears. And the existence of a token is incentive enough that someone somewhere is going to try and pump it. Like they're going to integrate in some new app. They're going to try and convince people to onboard to that. Like it's very hard to kill a project once it's got a token out there. So I think, you know, in a better world, somehow it would be easier to kill some of these projects and then like refocus people's attention onto that critical mass. But I don't know what it is.
Fragmentation as a feature, not a bug. I like this also because, Amelia, the simplest form of a dating app that we could build is one that sorts people by net worth. And so it definitely seems that, you know, I'm sure a lot of us would agree that there is merit to not disclosing all of your information in all of the places where you show up. Like there's a reason that some of us have passcodes on our phones and wouldn't hand it to me to put on the big screen right now. That means we all agree about privacy. We're just negotiating what those boundaries are. So, you know, to that end, obviously, we've all seen the increasingly scary world out there that can, in the form of wrench attacks, come after you based on what's in your wallet, or can be used for, you know, less nefarious means, but, you know, serving up experiences for you that are outside of your awareness, maybe outside of your interest, but still predicated on your identity data. So I'm not sure how much progress I've made in my own personal position here, but definitely agree that fragmentation is a technical challenge and a social feature, and that privacy is how we individually arbitrage our data with the rest of the world around us.
Okay, I have one kind of technical question about privacy as someone who's not a builder, and maybe this is interesting for everyone else, maybe not, but everyone in privacy is talking about ZK, Ts, or FHE. What's actually the truth on what's the best? I'm looking for the truth and not biased answers. So feel free to explain with nuance. VJ, no.
Yeah, Soulmates is going to use TEs primarily because performance right now. I think, yeah, it's just the teams I've been working with who, I'm not the technical person. Trusted execution layer. Trusted execution environments.
So you mentioned a few buzzwords here. We have zero knowledge proof. So this is a math-based way that we can prove something about a piece of information without actually seeing it. A trusted execution environment is exactly just that, an environment where you use hardware, metal, built in a specific way to be able to prove the veracity of something, you know, that's occurring or being computed upon. You also mentioned here fully homomorphic encryption. So you've got a bunch of data, it's encrypted, and you can learn about it all together. And then we have the hot new one on the block, IO, indistinguishable obfuscation, that allows us to prevent seeing the entire program itself, but can still prove that it was run correctly. And ZK-TLS, which is a way for us to be able to use basically the underpinning identity of a website to be able to assign or prove the fact that certain information came from the front of it. Now, ZK-TLS can be challenging because you can spoof the front of a website. Trusted execution environments are just that, trusted. You are trusting a specific piece of metal and the folks who created it. So to Amelia's point, it comes down to requirements. What is it that you're actually trying to do? And what type of performance do you need? Are you willing to trust math, or can you trust metal? Or if you need a combination, that's where you get fancy and start to combine these things together. So I don't necessarily think that there's a definition of best, but there can be best suited for a specific use case.
What's the importance of this topic? Referring to like real humans and onboarding, I don't think any humans care about tech. I just think they care about identity.
I completely agree. And that's why, we don't talk about it a lot, but for client-side proof generation, we can make that happen in sub 3 seconds. If you're worrying about, something that's larger, it's going to be slower. So to your point, why do we care about these different technologies? Because some are faster, some are slower, some are more interruptive to your UX, and some are less.
I think there are some end user implications, but the acronyms make it like, I don't want to go anywhere near this. ZK in particular, I think is actually super useful and something that if people like understood what it was, would demand it, which is, in the context of matchmaking, for example, like if you wanted to say, I will only date someone who has like above a certain credit score, as a silly example, you could use a ZK powered system to submit your credit score and, run a proof and attest that, okay, this person who is in the matching pool does in fact have above the credit score without like actually revealing or leaking the credit documents, which is, I think, something that people would want, like the ability to prove that they, have done certain things or have certain credentials. But by calling it ZK or zero knowledge, it's like pretty intimidating and people wouldn't want it. So there's a packaging, and at Privy we use TEEs, but again, like most of our customers don't really care to understand what TE stands for. A bunch of them do care how it works under the hood, but we love acronyms in crypto.
Yeah, crypto has way too many acronyms. Okay, I want to round this off, and I think I'm going to follow Annalisa's trend. I'd love to hear one spicy take from each of you about the space right now. There was a few about capital and post tokens. I'd love to hear some more, so I'm just going to hand down the microphone.
Yeah, my spiciest take right now is not super related to identity, but there's like a big narrative around how like the market is super divided into like meme coins and stable coins or degen use cases and financial services use cases, and like these being two totally separate worlds. And we're seeing like so much connection between them at Privy. An example of this is we work with Pump.Fun, which is probably like among the poster child of the former camp. And they launched a mobile app recently. And basically like every neobank payments company we talk to like wants to dig into like how the Pump.Fun mobile app works and how, they could facilitate transactions as seamlessly as Pump.Fun does. And it's just kind of wild to be talking to a neobank about Pump.Fun. So I think the worlds are like much more connected and everyone's watching each other more than people realize. And I think that's a cool thing about how our market is pushing like every part of it forward together.
Completely agreed. The different sides are flirting with each other across the dance floor. What we're seeing at Bravado ID is everyone from TikTok to HSBC getting down with ZK, but of course in a way that's not going to push it all the way up to their users. And so whether the 11,000 people of crypto Twitter like it or not, scale is here, from Citadel to BlackRock to a lot of these institutions, and they are ready to move in size. To your point, especially excited around stables.
I have two hot takes that tie into privacy, and I think one of them is that, like, a very large, a substantial portion of the people who are building in crypto right now, like, aren't building any kind of privacy features in their apps because, like, it's not a requirement. Like, it's they're serving like financial games on chain that essentially, like, the user base is entirely trained to have a kind of public key be their identity. Like, everything's tied to that. Like, the alternative and a lot of technological solutions basically add a lot of complexity to the use case without actually, like, helping the companies who are building them make more money out of the user base. Like, it might add a bunch of really nice philosophical things, but, like, in a lot of cases the builders don't care about it, and it doesn't help them get to product market fit. And I think the second one is that, like, when we think about onboarding people from Web 2, like, people in Web 2 have been aggressively trained, like, by companies and by governments to, like, just give in to every kind of possible circumstance where they have to expose their personal data and give them to more and more people. I think, when we talk about providing solutions to these people, I think, like, it is going to be, and it is today and it will continue to be in the future, like, a massive uphill battle to justify to these people that, this magical technology under the hood is somehow going to solve that problem for them when they've been trained and told that they should just expect to expose all their public data to everyone.
I think that agents are actually one of the use cases that are actually going to get us in with some of the likes of Instagram and X, because they actually want to play ball with us. Because having agents on X, hopefully eventually Instagram, is sort of inevitable. And they're not, they want to remove them, but they can't. So I actually think that's our biggest opportunity to work with them and actually play ball with them.
I guess my hot take is there hasn't been an application in this space so far that people really care about. I think when you, like, really zoom out and look at holistic landscape of speaking about these topics that we're discussing right now, and, like, this is, like, real intrinsic passion from everyone here. Like, there isn't something where I'm like, but no, wait, I'm, like, really caring and using this and I couldn't live without it. I think, like, almost the best use case and, like, crypto consumer today is, like, I think it gets a lot of hate, but meme coins has been, like, the most fun thing to do on chain. So I'm excited. Okay. I'm also happy to wrap this up. I want to say thank you to everybody here. Thank you to everyone that came. This is our last panel of the day. Emily, you're always a phenomenal moderator, so a round of applause for you. And for everybody else here, have a great day. We were meant to have, like, another segment after this called TLDRs. We are totally being kicked out of this venue. They double booked us, and also, another big event happening tomorrow. So if you are doing the TLDRs, please come and find me. I really apologize. Thank you all.